The Roman Empire was responsible for a number of important developments, including the invention of the alphabet and the calendar, both of which are still in use today, the spread of Christianity, and the formation of the Romance languages, the names of which are derived from Latin. As a direct consequence of Julius Caesar's ascent to power and subsequent fall from that authority in the 1st century BC, Rome underwent a transition from a republic into an empire during that same time period. Augustus, who was Rome's first emperor, held power for a considerable length of time and was responsible for a great many of the country's most important achievements during that period. This event heralded the beginning of a time in Rome that was prosperous and peaceful. It did so by marking the beginning of the period. On the other hand, the downfall of the Roman Empire is often regarded as one of the most momentous occasions in the annals of the history of human civilization. The ancient Romans had a profound connection to the land and were wholly reliant on it for not just their day-to-day survival, but also for the advancement of their social standing. The fact that they were dependent on the land helped to strengthen their connection. During the time of the Roman Empire, even Roman children were aware that various animals and plants had more than one use in Roman society. This was especially true of plants. As a consequence of this, the Romans made use of plants and animals for a broad variety of reasons, including the creation of food and medicine, cosmetics, and colors for fabrics. These are only few of the examples. In spite of the fact that they were technologically advanced, it is fascinating that they had a culture surrounding drugs that was more fascinating than any other society's culture surrounding drugs. Widespread use of opium. The Roman Empire was the world's largest consumer of opium, making it the dominant drug throughout that time. It was prescribed to ailing patients by their physicians, and one of the unintended consequences of taking it was that it put them to sleep. Opium was traditionally employed as a treatment for a wide range of conditions, including but not limited to coughs and diarrhea. When one considers the number of people who used a chemical that was so profoundly addictive, it is difficult to believe that none of Rome's brilliant writers ever mentioned drug abuse. Nonetheless, this was indeed the case. This does not imply that there are no records available that indicate the extent to which addiction is prevalent. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, joined the growing number of Romans who were addicted to opium and grew dependent on the drug. According to the historian Cassius Dio, Aurelius regularly used opium to alleviate the pain he felt in his chest and stomach when he led an army into combat. This ache was caused by the stress of being in command of an army. The anxiety that came with leading an army into combat was the root cause of this discomfort. Dio claims that this routine is what allowed him to continue through all of the difficult situations that he has experienced throughout his life. When Aurelius was ultimately able to stop his opium habit, he went through what Galen called dry humors, but which are more commonly referred to as withdrawal symptoms in contemporary vernacular. If the emperor was unable to access his opium supply, it would be impossible for him to muster his army or prepare for battle. This would prevent him from doing any of those things. In addition to this, he had to fight against the unfavorable impacts that came about as a direct result of the marijuana use that he engaged in. Even though it helped him fall asleep at night, it left him so fatigued during the day that he was unable to carry out his responsibilities, even though it helped him fall asleep at night. Thomas W. Africa, who wrote the book The Opium Addiction of Marcus Aurelius, is of the opinion that this could have been the case in the historical event. Even though the emperor had started taking the drug due of discomfort in his chest and stomach, he did not have any significant health problems at the time. Instead, he was able to lead a higher quality of life thanks to the drugs. Africa eventually comes to the conclusion that Marcus's drug usage did not inhibit him as much as it was able to bring out his innate reserve and rev up to a fever pitch his philosophical understanding. The infamous Salema porgy, the LSD fish. The oldest fossil evidence of people using opium was found in Italy, namely in the region close to Lake Bracciano, which is located to the northwest of Rome. This location is known as the Bracciano Valley. Poppy seeds that may have been used for oil, food, medicine, or possible cult use were found buried 3 meters beneath rock at the bottom of the lake. These seeds were found at the bottom of the lake. These seeds could be found buried behind the rock. Since it had been at least 7,700 years since people had lived in that region, it was presumed that the people who lived in those caves were of extremely advanced age. Despite the fact that the Romans used a treatment called salema porgi, which is derived from the fish species Sarpa salpa, it is thought that the bulk of pharmaceuticals used today originated either from plants or animals. Certain foods, such as the salema porgi, have the potential to trigger symptoms in people who are genetically prone to developing those symptoms. If a person consumes this unique fish, they run the risk of developing a form of food illness known as ichthyoalliinotoxism, which can lead to hallucinations in susceptible individuals. It is possible for a person who is suffering from ichthyoalliinotoxism to hear and see things that aren't there, experience delirium, have problems with motor coordination, nausea, nightmares, dizziness, and other disorders that are associated to the central nervous system. Warm and tropical conditions make up the salema porgi's habitat, which stretches from the coast of Africa's Atlantic Ocean to the Mediterranean Sea and includes both of those bodies of water. The fact that it has golden stripes running down both of its sides makes it very easy to identify. In spite of the fact that it seemed to be a typical and harmless fish, the ancient Romans were aware that it had the capacity to induce dreams that were analogous to those that were brought on by the use of LSD. The fish that makes dreams. But what causes people to have hallucinations after eating this fish? A research article titled, "One of the primary sources of nutrition for fish is the phytoplankton that grows on the seaweed known as Posidonia oceanica," which was published in 2012 in the journal In Vitro Cellular and Developmental Biology, found that one of the key sources of nutrition for fish is the phytoplankton that grows on the seaweed known as Posidonia oceanica. On the other hand, it is not apparent which substances are leading to such extreme reactions in humans. They could be indole alkaloids, which are a natural part of the diet of the fish and have the same chemical structure as LSD. These indole alkaloids are a possibility. This interpretation is simply one of many potential outcomes there could be. Two gentlemen went to a restaurant in 2006 that had a theme based on the Mediterranean, and while they were there, they dined on fish. They reported having a wide range of different hallucinations, both visual and auditory, which led to a significant amount of discussion in the media over the purported psychoactivity of the fish. During his vacation on the French Riviera in 1994, a man who was 40 years old at the time drank freshly baked sarpa salpa. After 2 hours, he claimed that he was beginning to feel nauseated for the first time. After only a few hours, he started to feel worse and eventually passed out as a result of his condition. It started to become difficult for him to see clearly. He started to feel physically weak, and he started to throw up. He tried numerous times to get into his vehicle and drive away, but all he could hear and see were animals in danger. Finally, he gave up and went home. He was hospitalized for a total of 36 hours, but the medical staff was able to assist him in making a full recovery from his condition. In yet another incident, a man who ate the fish later reported hallucinating that he could hear other people crying out and birds singing after doing so. He had dreams for 2 nights in a row, but he didn't tell anyone about them because he was afraid that if he did have a mental disorder, people would tell him that they thought he should be institutionalized because of them. Because of this, he was terrified of being evaluated. It is hard to believe that the Romans discovered this drug, and it is funny to envision them getting high while philosophizing, particularly given that they received it from a fish. It is hard to believe that the Romans discovered this material. We hope you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you're a history addict, and please let us know about what civilization or time period we should talk about. Also, watch another video here.